This lesson we're going to be taking a closer look at the DOM, the document object model, and this is again that representation of what's being output, and this is generated by the browser. And when we access the document object, we saw we've got a ton of different methods that were available. So when we do something like document, we see we've got all of these methods. So we can get the URL, and this gives me the URL of the web page. We can also do document. All of this is available for us, so we can do document body. So this is all of the contents within the body tags, which we can automatically grab and then make use of as needed. We can even do document. So everything is contained within here. And there really is a lot of stuff here that you can do with it. We can also create elements. So we can create an element on the fly. We can do something like create element and div and so on. And what this does is this creates a div. We can also append it into our HTML, so we can dynamically generate elements. And this is all about making that interaction and connection with your HTML content and JavaScript. And we could just as easily output this information. So we can take document URL or document body, but let's just use document URL and update our value here. So when we load the page, it's going to output whatever the value is within the page of the document URL. So these are all values, and just as we saw with the objects, in fact it is a giant object with a ton of information in it, we saw that we can access object data by doing the object name and then the property, and we could go in and we could access that information as a string value. And that's just what's happening here. So there's a number of other things that we can do as well, and we can pick up information. So let's do something like input. So basically what happens is you can actually grab this value from your document object and then use it within your JavaScript. So let me show you how. So we'll keep that same message, and then within message, what I want it to do is I want to take the value of input and I want to output it within my H2 element. So first of all, let's grab that value and we'll just create a temporary holder for that. And using the document object, we can use query selector, and there's a bunch of other ones as well. So we can get element by ID, so that's another popular one. And here you just need to specify the ID. So the ID is my input. And now if I console log out temp, let me show you what happens. So we'll refresh, we click the button, we're logging out that value there. So we can take this and we can actually get a value of it. So click and we see that whatever value is contained within there, we can output within the console. So then we're not far away from outputting it within our HTML. So let's create one and we'll just call it output. And what this will do is this is going to take that document object. So sometimes what I like to do, if there's an element that I'm going to be using often, I'll set up a const for it. And this can be my element or whatever we want to call it that we want to output, and grab it as we did before using the document, because it's all contained within that document object. And we can use the get element by ID, and then of course then we'd have to still add in an ID to that. So I'm just going to use query selector, and if you have more than one H2s, you could be in a little bit of trouble here, but query selector will just grab the first one by default. So now this is contained within the element, and I can actually output it, whatever that content is, using the my element. And I can add in these functions, the inner HTML, and then whatever value is being passed here. So just call it message, and then within here, actually I'm not going to call it message, I'll call it mess. So let's refresh, and let's just do an output and test that out. So it's updating that message. That's exactly what we want. So what we want to happen is when we click the value, I want it to output this value into the HTML. So knowing and seeing what you've learned in this lesson, what I want you to do now is pause the video and complete this task. So update that content that's contained within the H2 element whenever you click the button. This has to overwrite whatever is written in here. So try that out for yourself, and I'll show you the solution coming up. So now for the solution of this challenge, and what we wanted to do was output that value, this value into the HTML element, the H2 HTML element. And the solution was really easy because we had done quite a bit of the work during the lesson. So now whenever I click it, you can see that whatever value is contained within here is actually being output within that element. So go ahead and try it out for yourself and create this type of functionality where you've got an input field, you click a button, and then you output the content within the HTML.